This is Pastor Van Kelly. Okay, so the title of this sermon is Israel in Bible Prophecy, and I want you to hear what he says. His understanding of dispensationalism, which is the view that Ted Cruz kind of alluded to, and I'm going to let him explain to you what that is, because understanding what dispensationalism is and where it came from and why it is being used today to push forward these discussions and making decisions, geopolitical decisions and policies are being drafted after this view. So it's not a small view. Listen now.
Bible prophecy. Now, I'm going to try to do a lot. Some of the texts we'll look up, some we won't. But I want to tell you, if you get this topic right, you're on the path of life. And if you get this topic wrong, you're in a world of hurt and confusion. Right now, our world sits on the brink of being drug into what some would say World War III through a wrong understanding of the role of Israel in end-time prophecy. Back about 150 years ago, a line of thinking was developed in the Scofield Bible, and somewhat beyond that we call dispensationalism. And it's the idea that most of the Bible prophecies are not anchored in time, do not have a definite starting point, but we'll know it when they are. The problem is, all of these things leave world events liable to modern day interpretation without any biblical anchor points. The Bible, as the Protestant reformers understood it, had prophecies that could be started with definite dates. We call this historicism. When you look at a prophecy like the 2300 days that comes out of Daniel chapter 9, it tells you when it begins, under the command to restore and rebuild Jerusalem. And then you can start marking off time. You can see the prophecy fulfilled. This is one of the most amazing things that has brought many to the faith. God's prophecies have definite starting points and definite ending points. But because those prophecies of the Protestant Reformation pointed to the apostate church, different ways of looking at them were developed. One said it was all in the past. That's preterism. One said they're all in the future. That's futurism. That's where dispensational thought is. Wound up in dispensational thought is the secret rapture teaching. And of course, once the secret rapture happens, that's when you know you're marking prophetic time. The only problem is there's not going to be a secret rapture. Jesus is coming back, audible, literal, visible. The problem with believing the wrong thing is that you're lulled into a lifestyle and decisions that rob you of readiness to meet Jesus. The other problem with believing the wrong thing, like somehow modern Israel, that is the geopolitical Israel, has a special place in Bible prophecy, is that it puts the world on the edge of military brinkmanship over false alliances built on the wrong idea that America is here to take care of Israel in the future. It's absolutely imperative that we understand the role of Israel in the past and in the present and in the future. That we know who Israel is. Because if we get this wrong, it's very likely that we will get many other things wrong.
So good. So good. Now, he laid a number of thoughts. He didn't go into details of this. What he said, which I'm going to try to address, he said dispensationalism opens the door, right? It's a theory. It's an idea. And this is why I call this ideas have consequences. It's a biblical idea, okay? It's a school of thought, of interpretation that came about in the 1800s. It became popular. But where did it come from? Well, what you're about to hear in the next video is, and again, this is an unlikely source because I don't even like these guys because of some things they've said in the past that I'm like, man, these guys are a little bit off key. But I'll tell you what, in this video, there was a fair understanding. The starting point, they didn't start far early enough. I'm going to show you what I mean.
Show charity to the people.
There we go. Let's pick it up from here. So we have We have Tel Aviv, and also the Tucker Carlson discussion. They're having a discussion about that. Okay, so this is Pastor Webben. For those of you who don't know, Christian nationalists, America First policy, and that's okay. I don't make a big deal against that, as long as we don't start pushing certain principles that will violate liberty of conscience. But here is, so he's going to have an interpretation given here on dispensationalism. Like, Pastor Ron Kelly didn't go that far. He's going to go that far, but I'm going to go and take it back, farther back, because he's like, wait. It has a much more deeper origin, and the influence this is having on geopolitical decisions is massive. And this is why this video is crucial, because what these men are talking about here is actually true, but I'm going to tell you it's an incomplete story. I'm going to get to the heart of the matter in a minute. So now listen carefully.
Yeah, absolutely. So the origins of dispensationalism, there are those that try to root it farther back, sometime in the Middle Ages, to first kind of identify dispensational systems. But mostly, for the most part, it's the 19th century, around the mid-19th century, that as a system it emerges. And it emerges from a Anglo guy named John Nelson Darby. And Darby was part of a schismatic group, the Plymouth Brethren, which then went on to form some group called, it was like the Exclusive Brethren. And so you have kind of the worst of Protestant schism. And so you have a group that splits off and splits off. I was very prepared for them to be Baptist. I was like, this has got to be something. Born of the Baptists. But no, it turns out he was actually a former Anglican minister, and he was frustrated with the worldliness of the church. He was frustrated with all the structure of it. And he's kind of the prototype of dispensationalism. And what dispensationalism is, just to describe it, to steelman it, to equip you so you understand how it works, is dispensationalism is a system that says the overarching arrangement of the Bible and of God's work in human history is not by covenant, so Old Covenant, New Covenant, that would be covenant theology. That is not how God has arranged history in the Bible, but he's arranged it in dispensations. And you can see in this chart here, there are some dispensationalists that hold to 8 dispensations, some to 3.
Dispensationalists love them some charts.
You think we love charts?
Not like a
They love charts. So you'll see on the screen here, and I'll describe it if you're listening, but most dispensationalists hold to there are 7 dispensations. So the dispensation of innocence, that is Adam in the garden. So he's in it's a time where God is working in a certain way with man, and God works with Adam in a time of innocence. Man is set up with a test, and he fails that test. The next dispensation is the dispensation of conscience. You don't have the written law yet, as you get with Moses. You don't have God's chosen people called out with Abraham, but it is a time of conscience, and that ends with the flood. So man fails the first 2 dispensations. The next one is the dispensation in the time of Noah of human government. So again, there's no Abraham, there's no promised people, there's no law written on tablets. But here in this 3rd dispensation, human governments are set up. And man, again, is wicked, and that forms the need for God to call Abram out and to say, I'll make of you a great nation. I'm going to send the Messiah through your line. So you have the dispensation of innocence, the dispensation of conscience, the dispensation of human government. Then with Abraham, the dispensation of promise. Then with Moses, the dispensation of law. And those first 5 lead all the way up to the cross. And in each of those, they're kind of arranged as tests. My dad's actually a pastor, and he's a dispensationalist. And so we've talked about this a good bit. And so I'm literally describing what I love him. He's a good, godly man. What a good godly man, who I disagree strongly with on eschatology, would view. But he says in each of these, there's a test at the beginning, and man fails it. So with Moses and the law, God gives a law in Leviticus and Deuteronomy, and he sets up Israel, but Israel ultimately fails it. And so then here, between the dispensation of law and the dispensation of grace, you have the cross, where Jesus dies for the sins of all those who believe in him. A good dispensationalist is never going to say that there's 2 ways to God, that prior in the time of Moses, there was salvation through the law, but now after Christ, it's through the cross, and there was 2 ways up. They would, of course, hold that through all time, and the way anyone's ever been saved is by faith in Jesus. And so that 6th dispensation is the dispensation that we are in right now, the dispensation of grace, where again, God has given his only son, he's died for our sins, and people of the world are commanded to believe in him. But just like the prior 5 dispensations, where man is set up favorably and fails, the expectation is that in the same way, man will also fail this test. And this will dovetail nicely with the history lesson we're about to talk about. But man fails this test, and this leads to the 7-year tribulation. And at the end of the 7-year tribulation, there's the return of Christ. And he sets up one final dispensation, and this is the dispensation of the millennial kingdom. Christ rules and reigns for 1,000 years. And again, at the very end, you see this in Revelation 20, Once again, Satan is loosed and he deceives man. And so there you have it, at the great white throne judgment. God says at every moment, be it human government, be it innocence, be it sending my son, be it me reigning here on earth in the millennium, you have failed every test and I am vindicated. That's the best way I can kind of describe dispensationalism as a system. Again,
Okay, so now he's giving you the theological understanding that are inside of dispensationalism, if I were to go with that. But he's still not touching, the history of this. So what's lacking is the history. So Pastor Ron Kelly addressed in part the history. It says certain school of thoughts were invented to counteract or to bring about what is known as a counter reformation. In other words, the intent was to camouflage, cover up the identity of the Antichrist power, right? And we know who the Antichrist power is. It is Roman Catholicism. This was the school of thoughts for almost all Protestant reformers, even though they had issues on certain doctrinal views. But when it comes to who Antichrist was, even children, we were told in history, it's been said, even children under the age of 10, they knew who Antichrist was, okay, during the Protestant Reformation. This wasn't a confusion, so they knew. However, so something had to be done, right, to bring about contradiction and confusion in the body. So let me go through this very quickly, and then we're going to do some question and answers and this live stream. We're not going to be long today, I promise. So he give you the 7 expansion of dispensationalism, if I may make this a little bit bigger for you. So what you have is, but again, the best way I can explain is this. When you think about dispensationalism, right? If dispensationalism was a baby, the mother will be futurism. And I want to make sure I say that again. In the spirit of prophecy, Ellen White uses a term called the child of the papacy. What is the child of the papacy? It is the new Christian Sunday Sabbath. We know there's no such thing as a Sunday Sabbath, right? There's only a biblical Sabbath. It's not Jewish, it's biblical. Now, but the papacy came in 538 AD to 1798. So during that reign, it gave birth to something, took credit for it, right? In 331 AD, Constantine, relationship with the state, gave birth to what is known as the new Christian Sabbath, which is Sunday. And that became the gift that's been handed down to the Christian church. Even though Protestant churches left Rome, they took the Sunday with them. That's just a fact. Okay, so this is what is known as the child of the papacy in the Great Controversy. So the child of futurism is dispensationalism. Now, keep in mind, where did dispensationalism come from? What's the history? Well, let's go to the mother. The mother is futurism. But where did futurism come from? The futurism view was meant to counteract. It was a counter argument, okay, which is known as counter reformation. It was a counter reformation move that was done by the Jesuits to cover up the identities of Rome, of the papacy as the Antichrist power. But it was two theories came about. There was Luis de Alcalá, and there was also Francisco Ribera. There were 2 men. And I want to make sure I'm being slow for a reason, because I want people to understand this. This is massive, okay? So most evangelicals will say John Nelson Darby is the father of futurism. That's actually incorrect. And also dispensationalism was placed in operation and become popular with John Nelson Darby. But dispensationalism is only a child of futurism. So if you really want to get to the truth, you kind of have to go farther back. Now, keep in mind, it is dispensationalism that is being used in political circle today. We understand that. They're using the child. But what about the mother? So now let's get to the mother. And this is why Revelation, when you read Revelation, it's like there is a secret that is given in Revelation. In Revelation chapter 17, He's speaking about the whore of Babylon. And look at the wording in here. God calls it, and upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots, an abomination of the earth. Mercy. So, what is this saying? All roads lead to Rome. Not good ones, bad ones too. We are told here, if you find the abomination in the earth, you can always trace it back to the mother church. You can always trace it back. There's some way, somehow, there's a connection to Rome. And friends, I'm telling you, when you do your digging, you will realize, oh my goodness, it's out of control how much influence not only Rome has had in politics, in theology, in the state, in education. I mean, the psyche of society is driven until today. Some of the models and the buildings and the architectures and everything we have, the roads and I mean, we can get into it, but this tells you a lot. The influence that the Romish influence is still having even in modern day society. So when you're looking at dispensationalism, you have to travel backward. You have to say, where did this come from? Well, it is the child of futurism. So futurism, let me pull up this chat. So here is a better way to look at it. So you have some people, and thanks to James Bowen for that one from Hope, and was it Hope Heritage YouTube channel? So there were two men there. We have Francisco Ribera, and there's also Manuel Lucanza, Cardinal Bellarmine, or Bellarmine, some people will call him. There was another man too called Luis de Alcázar. But anyway, Francisco Ribera is the actual father of futurism. Luis de Alcázar was responsible for preterism. So what he did, he took the prophecies of Daniel and Revelation, he threw them in the back. He sent them backward. So you have this interpretation in the 6th century BC of Bible prophecy, like Antichrist, Mark of the Beast, and all of that stuff. Oh, that's past tense, baby. That's past tense. That's done in the time of Nero. That's done with Diocletian. You know, that's done with some of these wicked emperors, right? And we also had, what's his name? The man that was called Antichrist. Anyway, you can trace that to preterism, right? But when you move from preterism to futurism, futurism is what's dominating the minds of Protestants today. Listen to me. In the Southern Baptist Church today, 90% of the thinking is futurist. From T.D. Jakes to Creflo Dollar to Joel Osteen, and these are the big dogs, right? But if you move from these guys, you go to the average medium local churches, they are futurist. They are futurists. I'll go as far to say, even among Roman Catholics, that view dominates. This view called futurism, in almost all universities, theological studies that you go to get your doctorate and seminaries, and that's okay. I'm not telling you not to go to school. What I'm trying to say is you're going to come face to face with futurist views of prophetic interpretation. That's what drives the car, friends. It runs the show. So think about that, right? With the moral majority, with the influence in psyche, and also in how this applies to politics. This is driving. If 90-something% of mainstream Protestant churches believe this, and these men are siding with their politicians, they are the advisor of the Trump administration and all of that. It's not an attack on Trump. I'm just letting you know the thinking of the men that are around him. Can you imagine the kind of policies are going to drive certain decisions that are going to be made on behalf of the American people when this is the psyche that's driving it? So you got to understand this school of thought is not small. So Francisco Ribera, Cardinal Bellarmine, and also Manuel Lucanza, they took the theory of futurism rather than preterism, Antichrist, Daniel, Revelation, and so on, past tense. Now, there's certain parts of the book they throw in the past. It's not the entire book. We're not going to get into detail, but the point of the matter is they take the prophecies and they separate them. Preterism, past. Futurism, future. So you take Daniel, Revelation, the 7 last plagues, the mark of the beast, right? All of this stuff that we study and know, they throw them into the far future. But in the far future, the concept is there is a one-man Antichrist. There has to be a third temple rebuilt. It has to be a third temple. And then Antichrist has to come and sit in that temple. So which means the place where the Dome of the Rock is right now has to be destroyed. You get it? And I think I did a video. I think I can find it very quickly. What's his name? He's calling for the third temple to be rebuilt. And it was Pastor Greg Lockey. I'm going to do this on the fly. Pastor Greg Lockey, I think it's Advent Media Connect. I have it on my channel. Okay, so let's sit here. So this is the psyche that is driving. So if you don't understand, well, when you listen to Greg Lockey, right, talking about rebuilding the third temple to usher the coming of Jesus, like, yeah, he's a piece of work. Let's just put it that way.
Israel should make the Gaza Strip a parking lot by this time next week. Destroy the whole thing. So I hope Netanyahu's a leader and he just mows the whole thing down by this time next week. The Muslim religion hates Jewish people to the core of who they are. What they ought to do is evacuate up there on the hill and get a great big missile and blow that wicked Dome of the Rock plumb off of the spot where it's standing right now so we can get that third temple rebuilt and usher in the coming of Jesus.
That is futurism. That is an idea with serious consequences, right? Can you imagine? So why did he say that? Well, it's because of the school of thought. And that's what I'm trying to tell you guys. So when you get the understanding about the idea and you can actually attack that idea, you can show how that idea is unbiblical, how it doesn't fit the script. You can hopefully get some of these men to rethink their course. But if you don't address this idea of dispensationalism, which is the child of futurism, you're not going to get anywhere. They're going to go for World War III in the name of saving and fighting on behalf of Israel, geopolitical modern day Israel. That's how far they're going to go. And the question is, who is Israel for real? like what's his name? Anyway, I can't think of his name right now. He was one of my favorite pastors at one time. But anyway, let's move on. So you see the teaching of futurism invented by Jesuits has been passed down. Edward Irvin took it. And again, by the way, these are big names, by the way. Big names. Henry Drummond took it. Passed it down to John Nelson Darby. So think about it. The books are being shared. Materials are being written. Ways of interpretation of prophecies are being written. We're talking about a time when there wasn't a clear understanding of Bible prophecy. Again, after the Reformation, these guys are picking up. They have a zeal. They want to go. After the Second Awakening, so there is this desire to study the Bible. But again, they're picking up wrong teachings. And again, this doesn't mean all of these men are bad. They're going to hell. That's not my argument. They simply took on a wrong view of prophetic interpretation and they published it. And this stuff is in your politics today. So, and he made it to John Nelson Darby. And this is why when you hear that video coming from these guys that were talking about John Nelson Darby, they point to him. And they're not wrong for saying that. But it went beyond John Nelson Darby. It started before that. So, and then you have the Scofield Bible. Now you guys should know what I'm talking about. Don't you have a Scofield Bible, right? But in the Scofield Bible, they had the footnotes of dispensationalism views in the Scofield Bible. Now, remember now, Futurism gave birth to dispensationalism. But when Francisco Ribera started this theory, the goal was to do a counter-reformation to turn the eyes and the intention of the people away from the papacy as the Antichrist. That was the goal. And guess what? Mission accomplished. Mission accomplished. Because today, if you go through mainstream Protestant churches, you will not hear, apart from Seventh-day Adventist, you will not hear the Roman Catholic Church is the Antichrist Bible prophecy. You're not going to hear that anymore. Why? The Counter-Reformation has done its work. So now, Francisco Ribera never intended for the theory of dispensationalism to become a thought. He never intended for that. However, when it got to John Nelson Darby, he then began to add to it. So the theory was laid, right? And the different method in which it is interpreted was added later on. But it was added by John Nelson Darby, and in the Scofield Bible, it was thought. And then it passed down to Samuel Undermer. But Samuel, it wasn't just there, and this is where you get interesting. Samuel, and this one wasn't added in the midst. I'm just gonna tell you that story. It passed it down to a man named Lewis. Let me pull up his picture for you. It take me 1 second. So you're getting all these school of thoughts, right? How did it get into your politics? Well. Just wait, you find out. Boom. This is the founder of the Dallas Theological School Seminary. So you are looking at Mr. Louis Spreary Schaefer. Okay, listen, these are big names. Until today, we have many of our ministers who goes to this school to get their degree, and I'm not condemning them. But I'm saying a lot of time they come out with these theories as well. Sometimes it is. And I hear it among our own people. Like, this is, friends, Dallas School Seminary drives the futuristic view of prophetic interpretation like no other institution in the world today. This is where the school of thought is. And all your big modern day pastors went to that school to get their PhDs and so on. And now these men are next to President Trump. These men are advising thoughts and this and ideas. And again, there was an article. I couldn't pull it up for the life of me. I tried, but I'm working on it. Actually, you know what? I do have a PDF format. Thank the Lord for that. So I had to get a PDF format of this because they try to ask you for money to even open this up. But this is actually powerful. I'm looking to get in touch with this man. Jeffrey Rosario. Okay. Jeffrey Rosario. I listen, man, I got to sit down with him. When you read this, you said, my Lord, my God, and I'm not using God names in vain. The mainstreaming of Christian Zionism could wrap foreign policies, how the history of dispensationalism shapes U.S. foreign policies today. Okay. This is no joke. So, I mean, he went in there and began to show, he talked about a little bit about the CUFI. I think it's Christian United for Israel. It's one of the largest group today that is advocating for Christians. Okay. And they hold the dispensationalism theory. And that theory, these individuals that are in here, Ted Cruz is one of them, one of their next speakers, at least from what this article has shown. Anyway, this is a common thing. So keep in mind, these men are in Washington, Christian United for Israel, largest group pro-Israel organization. What do they hold? Dispensationalism theory. And what are they looking to do? They're looking to influence your politicians to fight for Israel no matter what. Did you hear what I said? No matter what. So this is how we got to the point where we are now. But But wait, I'm not done. I got one more character. So I've given you several, right? I've given you Francisco Ribera, Cardinal Balamines, Manuel Luancanza, Edward Irvins. You can track up on me. Listen, I've done I've done my research on this. John Nelson Darby, the Scofield Bible, and we got Samuel, and we also spoke about Mr. Prairie Schaefer. But wait. I'm gonna give you two more pictures. I'm copying and pasting here. 1 second. Guess who were working inside of the Dallas Theological Seminary School? Guess who were working there as professors? Tim LaHaye and Mr. Jerry Jenkins. Ha! Lord have mercy. He said, what does that mean, Mr. James? What are you talking about? Well. You know what they give the world? The Left Behind series. That's what they give the world. Yes. Friends, I can pull up like probably 10 different movies already on these guys where they're talking about Left Behind series. If you ever want to know what is the Left Behind series saying, well, that's where you get the idea of a secret rapture from, right? Secret rapture. Actually, there's a video of this pastor explaining what that is. Doug Batchelor exposes it, but the whole idea is, just all of a sudden Christ comes and he secretly raptures every single person on the face of the earth. It just happens just like that, and don't ask any questions. So anyway, yeah, this is what I'm talking about. There goes my guy. David Asherek was the guy I was thinking about earlier. David Asherek. How is he doing? I haven't heard much from him. Let me know. I love David Asherek. So I've heard some bad things people say. I'm like, I don't know. I can't confirm it, so I don't know. But I love David Asherek. That was my guy. I sat at his feet for a long time. What happens doing my reaction videos? By the way, that what I'm doing right now is usually what I do when I do my reaction videos. I go through the thing and I add and I take away and I add and I take away. And you guys see the finished product. You're like, oh, that's a great video, James. You have no ideas how many mistakes I've made, how many times I had to stop and reconsider. So yeah, it takes a lot of work. It takes sometimes it's 3 hours or so, 2 hours or so to finish one of those videos. And even when it's done, I have to do a lot of cleaning up after we are done. So anyway, I cannot find the video right now. But what's in that video? By the way, even him, he called it out too. It's John Nelson Darby. I mean, John Rich. I think that's a fair video to pull up. John Rich even called out the secret rapture. But remember, the secret rapture theory came through the dispensationalism. How did it come about? Let me explain it before I scattered all over the place. But here's the thing. According to the dispensationalism, the Antichrist is coming in the future. Remember that, right? And the prophecies now, they no longer apply to the church. This is known as the church gap theory. It's another theory within the same futurism theory. So there's like theories on top of theories, right? One lie makes room for another. So when you have the church gap theory is what is known today as dispensationalism. Okay, so in the church gap theory, that means during the age of the church, which is now the age of the Gentiles, as is referred to, prophecies doesn't have any application to us personally, but rather God is trying to appeal to Israel prophetically. The prophecies of Revelation only deals with Israel. It is after the building of the third temple then the prophecies are going to be applied to us. And there is now what is known as the 7 years of tribulation. One man, Antichrist, sitting in the temple of God. False interpretation also, because when you read the temple, it's the church, right? But nevertheless, they will say one man, Antichrist, sitting in the third temple of God, showing himself that he is God. And then there is when the prophecies will have an application to us. But keep in mind, during the 7 years tribulation, the church has been secretly raptured. Look at the deception. So Antichrist is covered up. The church is raptured. Prophecies are removed. Mark of the beast is gone. Right? And Rome gets to run around deceiving the world. Perfect. You see what the devil is so cunning, friends. It's so cunning, so cunning. Oh man. But anyway, let me tell you, John Rich on the secret rapture, Tucker Carlson, and I want to end with this video. There it is.
Is deceptive.
A very well,
You're saying is the Scofield Bible, its theology is deceptive.
a very wealthy, very
Remember where it starts, the Scofield Bible. John Nelson Darby gave the thought and ideas and theory in his writings, but the Scofield Bible had it in his footnotes. The Scofield Bible was one of the most popular Bible in the world. You had to have your Scofield Bible everywhere you go back then. It was the way to do things. And all the Dallas theological seminaries had Scofield Bible in there. And that was the theory that they were teaching, dispensationalism, one-man antichrist, gap theory, Israel as God's people until today, and we must stand with them no matter what. Third temple to be rebuilt. Antichrist is going to sit in the third temple. 7 years tribulation, secret rapture is all in there. And in the Scofield Bible were the footnotes that had all these ideas. These were taught to to your pastors, and these pastors are now sitting and standing next to your politicians, and now they're making decisions to go to war with Iran. Do you understand what I'm saying? I hope I'm making sense, because that's what's happening.
You're saying is the Scofield Bible, its theology is deceptive.
a very wealthy, very charismatic preacher named John Darby came with this doctrine that's now referred to as the secret rapture or the pre-tribulation rapture. And guess who he was connected to, by the way? The Rothschilds.
Interesting.
Have you ever heard of a Scofield Bible?
Yes, I have.
Okay, so C.I. Scofield was basically a student of John Darby, and he adopted that part of the doctrine, and he incorporated that into the Bible. It was the first Bible ever made that had study notes with it. It became so popular, every Christian was reading it, every minister was reading it, including me, including my own father. For a long time, that's what we believed too. But when you start actually going back and reading line by line by line what is said that will be leading up to Jesus coming back, which is when the rapture happens, it's the inverse of what John Darby put down.
My sense was the Scofield stuff, which has had massive implications for our foreign policy, for example, and in our domestic politics, was probably a lie. I do know that translation or that commentary on the Bible has had massive effects on our politics that have been very, very negative and resulted in the deaths of a lot of people.
Did you hear what the man said? He's actually on point. Now, he didn't tell you what term that was, right? It was dispensationalism, which is a child of futurism. If you remember that, friends, you remember everything in my sermon, in my presentation Tuesday. Dispensationalism is the child of futurism, okay? And it was, the futurist theory was invented by Jesuits, Francisco Ribera. And the thought and the goal was to cover up and blind the eyes of Protestants today from who Antichrist is. And let me tell you something, they are blind. Oh, Antichrist is AI, Antichrist is this, and they have no idea. And Antichrist is being hanging around, sitting in the temple of God among them, is sitting among them, and is deceiving them, and they don't even realize it. But again, that's because dispensationalism and the futurism theory has done his work, right? Yeah, Lucanza came up with the secret raptured. Okay, I mean, we can debate that one, but it wasn't really made publish until John Nelson Darby. So yeah, the secret rapture. Again, keep in mind, you might be right about that, right? The theory was there, but nobody takes it on and published it as we now have with John Nelson Darby and also Louis Sperry Schaefer. This is when they begin to publish it. Yeah, he invented the theory, but the publication, again, you have to look at it. Who made it popular? People had all kind of offensive views back then, right? Well, who made it popular? The person who made it popular is the one you want to think about. Yeah, you can think about the theory, but anyway, let's move on. So, but when you study the Bible, you carefully examine it. One of the big questions that is behind all of this and is behind all of this. It's a simple question: who is Israel? And when you listen to this sermon, and I'm gonna link this sermon for you. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna put it in the chat. I would encourage to listen to this. Pastor Van Kelly, when he has something to say, I notice he just puts a sermon out, or he takes an old sermon of his and the message that he wants you to know about is oftentimes in the sermon. So you kind of have to sit down and listen. The question you have to answer to make sense of all of this is not just attacking the theory. You have to go back to the heart of the message. Do you believe modern geopolitical Israel today in Palestine, you believe they are God's people, just as is always stated in Scripture? Do you believe that 100%? And if you do, then you have every reason to side with these politicians to go to war with Iran, if you believe that. But if you don't believe that, you have to be able to share from the Word of God why this is not the case. Now, let me be very careful with this. God has his children everywhere, even in Israel. And I'm very careful. I'm not going to condemn a group of people, okay, just because of a theological conception that I have. No, God is working with all mankind. And we had video here where we say the Israelites people are amazing until today. I believe that. But here are some things when you begin to study your Bible, right? And somebody put 2,300 days in the chat, and I'm reading your chat, and you spot on. You're reading my thoughts. Sister Regina, you spot on. He says they take the 7 years of the 490-year prophecy and throw it into the far future. Exactly. That's what became your 7 years tribulation. Pre-trib, mid-trib, post-trib. Before 7 years, in the middle of the 7 years, 3.5. The 3.5 years, you get it? 3.5 years ministry of Jesus Christ. That's what the prophecy is supposed to apply. But no, they moved that and tore it into the far future. And again, that's Jesuit propaganda for you. And you have the post-trib. So which one you want to be a part of? Are you a pre-trib, mid-trib, post-trib? No, I'm a second coming. I believe in the second coming of Jesus Christ. I have a different view when it comes to that. So it is those thoughts that are driving some of these men's policies. And friends, this is wrong for you. This is wrong for you. There's a lot of ideas that people come up with, but someone else takes credit for making it popular. And the truth is, if it's not popular, if the world doesn't accept it, it doesn't matter. You can have a lot of ideas out there, but until it becomes mainstreamed, whoever made it mainstream is the one we kind of have to give the credit to. So yeah, the ideas really were already laid by Lucanza, but it became popular definitely by John Nelson Darby and the Dallas Missionary School. So yeah, so you get the idea of what's happening here. So it is actually, when you study the 2,300 days prophecy, when he talks about the 70 years are determined, cut off for your people, to finish the transgressions, to make an end of transgression, reconciliation, and so on. You get the idea from Daniel chapter 9. Actually, when you carefully study that 70 years, that 490 prophecies, and Jesus in one of his parables talking about how often should I forgive somebody, right? 70 times 7, 490, right? So you get this idea that from the prophecy of 2,300 days, and by the way, you may not know, Jewish theologians hate that prophecy. They hate it. And I can show you, I can read to you like stuff they say, which I'm not going to do that right now. You may sound like I'm being anti-Semitic. I'm not. I don't really have a dog in this fight. But I'll tell you what. But if you see what Jewish theologian says about the 2,300 days, you be like, okay, I can see why you guys don't like this prophecy very much. Because not only he points to the Messiah, it shows the end of God's covenant relationship with Israel as a nation, not as a people, as a nation, because God can work with people no matter what, right? And it also shows that they did not fulfill the prophecy. Why? They rejected the Messiah, right? They stoned Stephen. Friends, there's no reason for us to be confused. And this sermon is going to answer a lot of this question for you. And I'm not going to get into all the details of it. I might play like 2 minutes and then we do some question and answers. But friends, we need a proper understanding of Bible prophecy. And if you can answer the question, who is Israel for real? Who is Israel for real? I can give you several verses for this, but I'll tell you one. Here is the reference that was made in the Bible through Abraham and his seed, right? Remember what Tucker Carlson asked Ted Cruz? Let me pull it up. What did he say to Ted Cruz? What are you saying? Are you saying? Listen carefully now.
49 questions about.
So that's what, but so you're quoting a Bible phrase. You don't have context for it and you don't know where in the Bible it is, but that's like your theology? I'm confused. What does that even mean?
Tucker.
I'm a Christian. I want to know what you're talking.
Remember, he said, where did he find it?
Blessed, and those who curse Israel will be cursed. And from my perspective, I want to be on the blessing side of things.
All right. So the reference he's talking about here, there's several of them, right? Those who curse Israel shall be cursed. Those who bless Israel shall be blessed. Yeah, there he goes. It's in Genesis chapter 12. It's actually a call to Abraham. It did not speak directly of Israel, but I want you to show you something. A little bit of Bible study goes really, really far. I will bless them that bless thee. Curse him that curseth thee. And in thee shall all the family of the earth be blessed. So in Abraham, God is going to bless the families of the earth. Now, you kind of have to be careful how you run in the interpretation of this. Because the first thing you have, there is a blessing and a cursing to the covenant being made, with Abraham and his posterity. But I want you to notice what the Apostle Paul says. I'm doing this on the fly, by the way. So it's in Galatians. So the Apostle Paul, look what he says. And this is when you compare Genesis chapter 12 to Galatians, everything opens up like a flower. The confusion just fades away. Look at that. Those few verses alone destroys the argument that the whole idea was not even Abraham, in a sense that you may think it was the seed of Abraham. And by the way, he's always been about the seed. So what is that seed? Now to Abraham and his seed, where the promise is made. He said not to seeds. This is huge. What does that even mean? God didn't say the seeds of Abraham is going to bless the world. The blessing and the cursing has no major connection to the seeds. Who were the seeds of Abraham? Well, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and the 12 tribes of Israel. 10 went missing. 2 were faithful, Rehoboam and Jeroboam, right? And out of Judaism, we have the Jews today. God says it's not the seeds that I'm talking about. Paul says, I'm talking about seed. So not the seeds of Abraham, but the seed of Abraham without an S. But what is the seed of Abraham? It is Jesus Christ. It is Jesus Christ. And again, friends, am I reading my Bible correctly? Oh, these guys trying to confuse me. Let's go to verse 29. Let's just take 28 just to be fair. There is neither Jew nor Greek. There is neither free nor bond. There is neither male or female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus. If you be Christ, then are ye Abraham's seed, not with a S. Like, you listening? Are you Abraham's seed and heirs according to the promise? Guys, I only gave you like 3 Bible verses And that's the end of the argument. Pastor Ren Kelly did an amazing analysis, biblical study on this. And I will tell you, this is the kind of sermon I really love. He gives you Bible for your feet. And I will encourage you, if you haven't heard this, take a minute to listen to this sermon, because the confusion fades away the moment you listen to this.
Jeremiah chapter 18. And I want to look at verses 7 to 10. Go past the Psalms and the Proverbs and come to one of these major prophets we call Jeremiah chapter 18. Now, there are many in the modern dispensational way of thinking that do not understand the nature of the conditional promises. Now, I'm here to tell you, the devil has a vested interest in keeping the world's attention focused on Old Testament Israel, because then he can make the Sabbath only for them. And then he can cloud the glory of the second coming of Jesus, because if you keep your mind focused on Old Testament Israel and it's got to get a place back, you come with this aberrant theology. I mean, when you look at Daniel chapter 9, when it says 70 weeks are determined for your people, that's the beginning of the most amazing Bible prophecy in all the world. 2,300 symbolic days, or over 2 millennia of prophecy. And the first 490 years, 70 weeks, 70 times 7, is set aside for the people of Israel. And the truth of the matter is, you come down to that 70th week, and it's either about Christ or the Antichrist. You have to decide. But I can assure you the Bible's very clear. It says until Messiah the Prince come. And then in the middle of that last week, he's cut off. But dispensationalism, with its focus on the future and its resistance to the truths of the Bible, in other words, every Christian is a spiritual descendant of Jesus, which makes them a spiritual descendant of Abraham, which makes them a spiritual Hebrew or a spiritual Jew. But the problem with being a spiritual Jew is that you're freighted with all of these limitations. Mm-hmm. Chief of which is the fourth commandment.
Yep.
So the devil would love for us to be stuck focusing on Old Testament Israel as if it has some future glorious reference, but it does not.
It does not.
Now,
that was a mouthful. I mean, he just summarized my entire one and a half hour live stream in probably 2 minutes. So anyway, having said that, I think we can end this video right here. But I'll take some question from you guys. You did any questions that you have? Somebody said that seed equals Jesus Christ. That's right, Deborah. You can't have the seed without Christ. Christ is the seed. As a matter of fact, the word seed is found in Genesis chapter 3, verse 15. The seed of the woman is Jesus himself. So the belief in Jesus Christ, right? If you are baptized into Christ, you have put on Christ. You are all children of God by faith in Jesus Christ. You know, I'll tell you another thing from just a logical, just a number perspective. Right now in Israel, Israel was established as a nation, reestablished as a nation in 1947. Right. Prior to that, they're gone missing. They were scattered. Some people say, oh, that's prophecy being fulfilled. I don't think so. I respectfully disagree. I will say that was just politics, literally politics. Anyway, let's move on. But let's just look at the population as a whole. Population of Israel today, 9 million people. Okay. How many of that 9 million people believe in the gospel of Jesus Christ? I don't know. I can tell you it's very few. But let's just say how many of that 9 million believe in God, just generally. Here are some facts. You can do the research online. 20% are secular and atheist. 20%. Out of that 9 million, there's another 20%, which makes it 40%, that are not even Jew by DNA. Palestinians, Christians, Egyptians, some of them live in the land as well. So there's like 60% left. Out of that 60%, you have what is known as Orthodox Jews. So 60%. Friends. And then politicians are making decisions to to say, we're gonna go to war now. I'm like, guys, go read your Bible. Go read your Bible. Listen, I don't care if you're Republican or Democrats. If you think going to war on behalf of Israel in the name of fulfilling prophecy, you need to stop and go read your Bible and pray, because you are about to make some crazy decisions. And I'll tell you what, research have shown 63% of Americans disagree with this. About the other 20-something percent of them say, I don't know what to believe. Others support it. So over 63% of the people in the United States today, even among Trump supporters as well, say, listen, we are not for this. Americans are saying we are not for this. The majority of Americans says we don't want it. So another American intervention in Israel to support the war with Iran will spill into World War III. They know that. That's why I'm trying to give this Bible study. Hopefully somebody will listen and tell these men, hey, you're reading your Bible incorrectly. Don't go that direction.